Hey, what's up? It's Jared with Ditch Auto, and I wanted to talk today about whether or not the A7R III is worth upgrading to. Now, this definitely isn't a cheap camera, but there's more expensive routes to go now with the Sony A9. Now, I've had the Sony A9, and the camera I was shooting with previously to this was the Sony a7R II. Now, the Sony a7R II is still a fantastic camera that checks a lot of the boxes in what I need in a camera. So a lot of people have been asking if the a7R III is worth the upgrade, whether you're upgrading from an a7R II or maybe just an a7 II or maybe even an a6300 or a6500 or something like that. Like, what are you going to gain by spending the extra money to get a camera like this? So regardless of what you're coming from, I wanted to talk about some of the new features that are in this camera specifically, which I still haven't done my full review of this camera yet, but this is more about whether or not it's worth an upgrade. So you'll want to make sure to subscribe to the channel here so that you can get notified when I put out my full review. Now, I've also had this camera for a little over 3 months, and so I wanted to talk in another video about having it for that period of time and what I've thought about it. And then I also have the 5 settings to change video that is up that you should definitely check out as well. So the things that definitely sell it for me on this camera is the ability, it has the multi-select tool here, which gives me the ability to move my focus point around. I use that a ton. The other thing that I use is, of course, being able to use the touchscreen to tap to focus and also do live focus when I'm shooting, and I can move my focus point around and actually, control my focus point easily that way. I think that those are game changers. Having the tap to focus, especially when I'm shooting video, being able to rack focus from one thing to another. You can't do that on, you could do that on the a6500, you can do that on the A9, but you can't do it on any of the other cameras that didn't have that feature. The multi-select tool, which of course is on the newer versions of the cameras, is a great upgrade because, like I said, you can move the focus point around or you can remap it to do other things that I used to have to rely on the control wheel to do. I like the relocated record button. It's taking a little bit of time to get used to it being there, but it's a much more natural place for that record button to be. Now, the autofocus is extremely improved in this camera as well over the a7R II, of course, I've yet to play with the a7 III, but the a7 II, the a7S II, the autofocus is just way better on this than some of those older versions. Also, the face recognition or the face detection is fantastic as well. One of the other big things is the increased battery size. Of course, it uses that new style of battery, and with the battery grip on it, it gives me the ability to store 2 of those big batteries in here, which is fantastic because I get easily all-day battery life out of this camera when I'm shooting photos. That's thousands of photos that I'm able to take without the batteries running out. It also has USB Type-C in the side of it, and I can use that to charge the batteries that are in the battery grip if I have a battery grip on, or of course charge the battery in the camera, which is typical on most Sony cameras. But to my knowledge, this is one of the first ones that I've actually been able to charge the batteries in the battery grip while plugging the charge cable into the side of the camera. That's fantastic, and I absolutely love that feature. Another valid upgrade point, considering that the a7R line of cameras are higher megapixel, typically people are shooting things maybe that are a little bit more important there because you want that higher resolution. Having the dual SD card slots is great because those large file sizes are going to take up more memory. Also, when you're shooting those events or whatever or maybe a wedding, and you want to have redundancy, you can have those 2 cards in there. That's going to make it a lot better for you as well to have that redundancy. Or if you would rather have smaller cards, you can have 2 cards in here and have it shoot from one and then automatically go over to the other card when the first card runs out. With that extended battery life, you're going to have that chance of that happening, especially if you're shooting a lot of 4K video. Having that second card in there ready to go is a fantastic option. Another feature that I really like is having the dedicated AF on button on the back of the camera. That means that I can enable back button focus much easier. On my a7R II, it had that tiny little button that I mapped to back button focus, but it was really kind of a pain in the butt to use because it was so tiny and kind of countersunk a little bit. I can disable the AF when you press down the shutter button a little bit, enabling only back button focus, which helps me get better chance of locking focus and maintaining focus on something. In my 5 settings to change video, I talk about how to set back button focus only on this camera. I absolutely love having that dedicated button there now. Now, one other thing they changed a little bit was the size of the body. Obviously, they had to accommodate the bigger battery, and the body size is more in line with the A9 camera. Gives you just a little bit more to hold on to, and for somebody who has a decent sized hand, I like the way that it feels, especially with the battery grip down on the bottom. So it's just a well-balanced camera too. I like, the fact that when I'm shooting all day, there's not as much strain on me as when my camera is kind of unbalanced, especially when I used to shoot like with the A7R, the first version. That definitely was not a very well-balanced camera. I think Sony has really started to improve the camera by adding a little bit more bulk to it. So I like that, and it's definitely a little bit better than the A7R II, although the A7R II was still pretty good. So with that said, those are some of the things that I think would make this a valid upgrade. Obviously, getting your hand on it and trying it are super important. There's a lot more under the hood that I didn't discuss. I was mainly discussing kind of visible things and things that I've noticed that have really helped me out. There's a lot under the hood that's been improved in this camera that I'm not going to go into because you can go read the specs all day long on that, and I'm definitely going to talk more about that in a review video. But for me, I'm glad that I upgraded, even though my A7R II was a fantastic camera. It was getting a little long in the tooth, being, whatever it was, close to 2.5, 3 years old or something like that. So I was really glad that the A7R III came out and that it had enough valid upgrade reasons for me to go ahead and get one and hang on to it. So let me know what you think. Is this a valid upgrade? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Definitely share those. There's a link with more resources in the description below, so make sure to click on that. There's also an Amazon link down in the description below to where you can see pricing on the camera and more specs and information on it. Definitely, if you end up buying the camera, it helps support our channel here or anything else after clicking on that link. This camera definitely is worth the money. I like it. Using it with these G Master lenses is fantastic. I'm not being paid by Sony to say these things. I'm definitely just a Sony fan. I bought this camera with my own money and did not get sent anything from Sony. I have not been that fortunate yet. So with that said, I hope that this video helped you kind of decide whether or not this is a valid upgrade for you. I look forward to coming back and sharing my thoughts when I get my hands on an A7 III so that we can kind of do a comparison there. I think that that's going to be a really interesting comparison between the A7R III and the A7 III. So I hope that you click subscribe so that you can be notified when that video comes out. If you want to learn how to shoot in manual mode on your camera, get out of that auto mode and shoot in manual, I have a free course for you. Definitely check out the link down in the description below to our Ditch Auto course, which is going to help you get out of auto and start shooting in manual, which is really going to unlock the true potential of your camera. So make sure to check out that course. Until then, have fun shooting, and I hope to see you back here soon on Ditch Auto.